This story is for everyone who has ever been underestimated, dismissed, or forced to endure cruelty in silence. History shows us that Al Capone was left for dead in a Chicago alley, yet 6 months later built an empire that controlled every politician and cop until only the federal government could stop him. Lucky Luciano had his throat slit and was left hanging from a meat hook, yet became the father of modern organized crime. Meyer Lansky was mocked for his size, but that underestimated mind built a financial network so vast the FBI could never trace its edges. These men understood that weakness is not defeat. It is camouflage, armor, the last thing your enemies see before you destroy them. Tonight's story is about a king who mastered that lesson better than anyone. A man who let the entire underworld believe he was broken, confined to a wheelchair after a car bombing. They called him the Broken King, whispered his mind had shattered with his body, divided his empire like vultures. They had no idea he was watching, recording every betrayal in a black ledger that would one day come due. His name was Gabriel Ashford, 36, formerly the most feared man on the eastern seaboard, now seemingly a helpless invalid. Or so they believed. He needed a wife for the final piece of his plan. Fate delivered Scarlett Hayes, 27, whose father had sold her to pay gambling debts. A woman who watched her 14-year-old brother Ryan dragged away by traffickers 9 years ago. A woman who worked 3 jobs for 9 years to repay debts that were never hers, who had been beaten, scarred, but never bowed to anyone. She entered his mansion expecting to serve a broken man. On their wedding night, he rose from that wheelchair, crossed the room on 2 steady legs, looked into her eyes with a gaze sharp as blades, and whispered, "Now the real game begins." The apartment in Queens reeked of decay. Scarlett Hayes pushed through the door, hands burning from 12 hours of dishwater, and saw her father with his whiskey and that smile she had learned to hate. He announced good news, that everything would change. They would be free. Scarlett asked in a voice cold as steel what he had done. Robert Hayes explained he had found a way to erase the $5 million debt. Gabriel Ashford wanted to marry her. The name echoed like a death sentence. The crippled king, confined to a wheelchair after the explosion 3 years ago, rumored to have lost control of body and mind. She asked if he was selling her to a disabled man to pay his debt. Robert stared at the floor, muttering this was the only option, that the loan sharks would kill them otherwise. Scarlett thought of 9 years working like an animal, 9 years of beatings, 9 years in the pit her father had dug. She asked when. "Tomorrow," he replied. "The wedding within a week." That night, Scarlett couldn't sleep. Memory dragged her back 9 years to when she was 18 and Ryan was 14. Her brother loved reading, dreaming of becoming a doctor. That night, 3 men kicked open the door. Her father stood behind them, head bowed, shoulders trembling. The men moved toward Ryan. Scarlett screamed and stood in front of her brother, threatening to call police. One laughed and explained her father had signed an agreement to use the boy to settle his debt. She understood her father had sold Ryan to traffickers. Ryan clung to her, crying. Scarlett wrapped herself around him, swearing they would have to step over her corpse. One man punched her so hard she crashed to the floor, blood spilling from her split lip. They grabbed Ryan while she lunged at them, clawing, biting. They slammed her into the wall until everything blurred. The last thing she saw was Ryan's face, brown eyes flooded with tears, screaming her name as he was dragged out. The last thing she heard was his crying, begging, calling for her. When Scarlett woke, Ryan was gone. Her father sobbed about having no choice. She went to the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. That night, she cried until no tears remained. After that night, she never cried again. For 9 years, she searched for Ryan everywhere, but he had been swallowed by darkness. The black Rolls-Royce collected Scarlett the next morning. The journey from Queens to Manhattan felt like traveling through 2 different worlds. The Ashford estate was a Gothic palace with sharp towers, stained glass windows, and a massive iron gate with roaring lions. 2 men waited. Victor Crane, 45, tall, with cold steel eyes, looked her up and down like merchandise. Maxwell Crane, his son, stepped too close with predatory green eyes, saying it was a waste for a flower like her to wither beside a cripple. Scarlett looked straight into Maxwell's eyes and replied she was not a flower and didn't need anyone to water her. They led her through endless corridors to a vast library where Gabriel Ashford sat in his wheelchair near the window. He had black hair falling over his forehead, pale skin, gray eyes staring into nothing with a vacant expression. His head tilted to one side, mouth faintly open, hands trembling. Victor spoke loudly and slowly, as if to a child. Gabriel blinked sluggishly and stammered that she was beautiful. Maxwell whispered this was her future husband, a genius who now couldn't finish a sentence. Pathetic. But Scarlett stepped forward and looked straight into Gabriel's eyes, not with pity or disgust or fear, but with a level gaze. In that moment, she swore she saw a flicker of light flash through those dull eyes. Not the gaze of a madman, but of a predator watching from shadows. Gabriel asked if she wasn't afraid of him. Scarlett replied she had lived through things nightmares were afraid of. The room fell silent. Then Gabriel said he wanted to meet her alone. Victor protested, but Gabriel cut him off. I am still the head of this family, Victor. Have you forgotten? Scarlett understood something was wrong here, that Gabriel wasn't as simple as everyone believed. That night, Marcus Cole led Scarlett to Gabriel's study. The room was lit by fireplace flames. Gabriel's wheelchair faced the fire. Finally, his voice broke the silence, asking why she agreed to marry him. Scarlett answered honestly. She had no choice. Her father sold her. She was here to survive. Gabriel pulled out a thick envelope and tossed it to the floor. $100,000, he said, without stuttering. Enough to run, start a new life, anywhere. Scarlett's heart pounded because this was freedom. But she thought of Ryan. If she ran, she'd never find him. She picked up the envelope, walked to Gabriel, and placed it back in his lap. She told him she didn't need his money to run, that she was here for her own reasons that mattered more than freedom. Gabriel smiled, the first smile she'd seen. You are very interesting, Scarlett Hayes. On our wedding night, you will understand why I chose you. The wedding took place 3 days later in the private chapel. Scarlett stood in a white dress she hadn't chosen, wondering if this was a wedding or funeral. Guests were all powerful underworld figures, whispering cruel words, saying she was nothing but a cheap prostitute bought at bargain price. The ceremony was brief and cold. When Gabriel reached the words, "until death," his voice suddenly became firm, and his eyes locked onto hers with intensity that stole her breath. The bridal suite was vast, with red velvet curtains and hundreds of burning candles. Scarlett entered alone and saw Gabriel's wheelchair by the window. She drew a deep breath, preparing to endure whatever came. Then she heard metallic scraping, not the chair moving, but someone rising from it. She saw Gabriel's shadow stretching upward, standing tall. He couldn't walk. He was paralyzed. Everyone said so. But Gabriel Ashford turned around, standing on his own legs, 6'1", broad-shouldered, muscles taut. He stepped toward her, each movement steady and commanding. Scarlett backed against the wall, trembling from shock. Gabriel stopped directly in front of her, his gray eyes sharp as blades. 3 years, he said in a voice no longer broken. 3 years I sat in that wheelchair so they would believe I was finished. Gabriel explained he watched them laugh and carve up his empire for 3 years while they believed his mind had shattered. They had no idea he was recording every betrayal in a black ledger. Scarlett whispered, "Why?" Gabriel smiled, cold and dangerous. "Because Victor Crane tried to kill me. The car explosion 3 years ago, he was behind it. He wanted my empire and thought he had succeeded. But Gabriel survived and decided if they wanted a crippled king, he would give them one. He would let them grow comfortable, reveal themselves, make mistakes. And when the time came, he would stand up and burn everything to the ground." Scarlett understood. The wheelchair wasn't a prison, it was camouflage. Gabriel Ashford wasn't a victim, he was a predator, waiting in the dark. Gabriel poured whiskey and began telling his story. 3 years ago, he was at the peak of power, controlling half of New York. But he didn't see the enemy beside him, Victor Crane, the man he trusted like a brother. That night, his car exploded at 52nd Street and Madison Avenue. He remembered fire, metal tearing apart, the smell of gasoline and blood. Marcus dragged him from the wreckage to the hospital. In the hospital, while Gabriel was comatose, Marcus overheard Victor saying the job was done, that Gabriel Ashford would never wake up, that the empire was his now. When Gabriel woke, doctors said he might never walk again, that his brain could be damaged. That's when he realized this was an opportunity to uncover everyone who had betrayed him. He pretended to be crippled so they would lower their guard. Gabriel opened a hidden drawer and took out a black leather-bound notebook. For 3 years in the dead of night, he had written everything down. Every name, transaction, secret meeting, every betrayal they thought he didn't see. Victor Crane, James Sterling, Senator Thomas Harrington, and dozens of others. He snapped it shut like a coffin lid closing. 3 years he waited and gathered proof. Now he had everything, except one thing. Someone who could move freely where a wheelchair couldn't go. Scarlett understood. That's why you need me. You need a wife no one takes seriously. An unknown girl from Queens they'll ignore. Gabriel nodded. You understand quickly. That's one reason I chose you. But not the only reason. He revealed he had been watching her for 2 years, knew about her 3 jobs, the beatings, the scar on her back. But the reason I chose you is because you never submit. I saw you stand before a creditor twice your size, and you didn't bow your head. You looked at him like he was a worm. Then Gabriel said he knew about Ryan. Scarlett felt someone had punched her chest. Gabriel explained he knew her father sold Ryan to traffickers 9 years ago, that she had searched for him without results, spent every dollar hiring investigators. Tears welled in Scarlett's eyes, the first in 9 years. You know where he is, she asked, voice shaking but eyes burning. Gabriel nodded. I do. And if you prove worthy, I will give you everything. Not just information, but Ryan himself, alive and safe. Scarlett asked what he wanted in exchange. Gabriel said he needed an ally, a partner who would stand with him when he burned every traitor to the ground. He needed her absolute loyalty until this war was over. Scarlett thought of Ryan, of 9 years of suffering, of everything she could reclaim. Then she agreed, with one condition. When Gabriel took Victor down, she wanted to see it. Wanted Victor to know the girl he treated like garbage played a part in his destruction. Gabriel smiled, almost warm, almost proud. You truly are the perfect wife for me. He took her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to it like a vow. The agreement was sealed. From now on, they were allies, partners, husband and wife in the only way that mattered. The weeks that followed passed like a strange dream. By day, Scarlett played the devoted wife of the crippled king, pushing Gabriel's wheelchair through corridors. But at night, Gabriel taught her everything: how to observe, recognize lies through facial movements, read body language. "You were born for this," he said. "You have a predator's eyes." The long nights together became something she looked forward to. They sat with whiskey while Gabriel told her about building his empire from ashes, about ruthless decisions he'd made to survive. He didn't paint himself as a hero, told her the raw truth, and Scarlett, who had seen humanity's darkest side, didn't judge. She told him about her mother who died of cancer, about her father who became a gambling demon, about Ryan whom she couldn't protect. Gabriel listened, never leaving her face with his eyes. When she finished, he reached out and took her hand, holding it firmly like a wordless promise. Scarlett realized something was changing between them, something dangerous and beautiful she didn't dare name. She noticed small things: how he made sure she ate properly, arranged books she liked in her bedroom, how his eyes softened when he looked at her. 2 weeks later, Gabriel woke Scarlett at 3 a.m. They drove through empty streets to a small suburban house. Gabriel said inside was something that belonged to her, something he had kept safe for a year. Scarlett's heart raced with intuition she didn't dare believe. She walked into the house and saw a thin young man with curly brown hair and brown eyes. Eyes just like their mother's. The eyes of the brother she had lost 9 years ago. Ryan. The name slipped from her lips like a broken whisper. The young man turned and cried out her name. She was in front of him, hands cradling his face, crying, the first tears in 9 years, pouring out as if a dam had burst. They stood wrapped in each other's arms, two shattered pieces of a broken family, finally fitting back together. Gabriel stood in the doorway silently watching. Scarlett turned to look at the man who had given her this gift, who had found Ryan in a Mexican brothel and brought him back, treated him, protected him for a year without saying a word. She stepped toward Gabriel and kissed him. Their first kiss was not of bargain or alliance, but of deepest gratitude, of a heart frozen for 9 years finally beginning to thaw. Gabriel's arms went around her waist and pulled her closer, kissing her back with tenderness she never imagined he could possess. When they parted, he said in a low voice he would burn the entire world for her. And Scarlett, tears still on her cheeks and Ryan standing safe behind her, replied that then they would burn it together.